Welcome to M Squared TechCast, a live show offering the latest news and interviews with the people driving business, technology, and politics in Michigan. Now, your hosts, Matt Roush and Mike Brennan.
It's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And we're back with today's third segment on the M Squared TechCast, now with video.
Yep. And the whole show today is devoted to, you want to start a cannabis microbusiness? Well, we got the experts here that are going to tell you how to do that, including Scott Roberts, a principal at Scott F. Roberts Law Group. Where are you based out of?
Oh, downtown Detroit.
Okay. And what he's going to talk about are some of the basic requirements and restrictions applicable to the microbusiness license. So this is the legal part. So take it away, Scott.
Sure. You know, the microbusiness, just kind of a general perspective, we sometimes call it a caregiver license on steroids, because a lot of what the caregivers are doing right now, the microbusiness allows you to do that under the rec market. Mm-hmm. So kind of very big picture, what the microbusiness allows you to do is grow 150 plants, process those plants, and then sell them all direct to the consumer. But what it doesn't allow you to do is purchase someone else's plants for sales to the consumer or sell to, say, another microbusiness or another licensed entity.
So it's very vertical in this case.
Yeah, it is a 100% vertical license, and you can do pretty much everything the processor, retailer, and grower license can do, you know, subject to the plant counts, but do it with only one license and only pay a $6,000 to $10,000 licensing assessment, as opposed to, you know, under the medical right now would be something like $190,000.
Yeah, I looked at that as some big numbers that would scare most people off anyway.
Yep, yeah, and big capital requirement.
Yeah. All right, so let's start right at the beginning. So you've got, of course, 150 plants. You're talking about a very large area. How many acres is that?
Well, you know, 150 plants, that can be grown in as big or as small of a space as you want. It kind of depends on your cultivation methods. You know, you could easily fit that in 1,000 square feet if you kind of had very small plants, but you're not going to necessarily get the yield you're probably going to want because, you know, hopefully you have a lot of demand for your product and you're going to be selling more than you would produce in just 1,000 square feet. You know, some people 4,000 or 5,000 square feet would be best. It just, you know, there's really no right or wrong answer on that.
I know my tomato plants do best when you plant them about 3 feet apart, and I think we're talking about roughly the same size plant. So, you know.
Yeah, but with a marijuana plant, you know, you can have very small plants that you just kind of continuously harvest, or you can grow really large plants.
So they can be 10 foot tall too, right?
Yeah, with the large plants, you know, you're going to get a lot more yield per plant. And because the marijuana microbusiness, you know, it's limited by the 150 plants. You know, if you're going to want to, say, have enough to process and sell a fair amount of processed goods in addition to flour, you know, at least with some of those 150, you're going to be really incentivized to grow really, really big plants that can yield, you know, upwards of 10 pounds per plant.
Wow, times 150. So let's start with the basic steps. Now, so someone wants to get a license. How do they proceed to do that?
So there's kind of 3 hurdles to cross. You know, the first hurdle, I would say, is getting a location in a municipality that will let you operate. You know, the rec law is considered kind of an opt-out law, meaning if you don't opt out, you're considered technically opted in. But, you know, the practicality of that is that you still really need a municipal approval. You're still going to need a C of O, and then the municipality...
Unless you're growing in a rural area or something, right?
But, well, it's a marijuana microbusiness is still a facility.
Okay.
So as a facility, you have to have, you know, 4 walls, a ceiling. You have to meet certain building
you can't grow it
requirements.
outside then?
You would be able to cultivate outside if you're, you know, complying with the outdoor cultivation rules that are out there.
Do you have to have security or something? Or?
Well, you're going to have to, again, so, you know, each little segment of what you're doing, you have to comply with the rules applicable to those other licenses. So, for instance, with your retail component, you have to comply with all the rules that are applicable to marijuana retailers under the recreational law. And for the processing, you know, so on and so forth.
Okay, so Joe Average wants to start one of these. Maybe he or she doesn't want to do 150 plants. Who do they apply to?
So, you're going to have to get municipal approval. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to apply and receive a municipal license, but you do have to get their, approval in one way, shape, or form, whether that takes the form of a C of O, or I think a lot of the places will literally just have licenses the same way they do under medical. On top of that, you have to, get approved by the state, and the state has kind of broken up the rec process into, a pre-qual or pre-qualification, similar to how they have done in the medical, and then as well as kind of a final license. So those are kind of like the three barriers: the state pre-qualification, the municipal, finding a property, which would probably be the toughest part of this.
Yeah, and most expensive too. Well, then you got to set everything up. I mean, you got to set up. If it's indoors, you have to set up grow lights and all these facilities for growing. However, you're going to do that. I don't know if you do it with hydroponics, but certainly it'd probably just be a large pot and soil and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the build-out costs are probably going to be somewhat substantial, kind of similar to what we're seeing on the medical side, because, they have to comply with all those rules about, like fire suppression and commercial grade walls and doors. So, the practical effect, there are no capitalization requirements for the micro business.
Well, realistically, you're looking at $50,000 or $100,000 or something, right? Or
for a build-out, it could easily exceed that amount.
wow. So it's still probably you're going to see people teaming up rather than an individual coming up with all that cash, right?
Yeah, and we have a lot of clients right now who maybe only have $50,000 or $100,000, but they're raising that from friends and family or outside investors. There's also a couple kind of financial brokers who are able to kind of connect people with lenders in the area, both kind of asset-based and income-based. So, there is availability to kind of finance some of these projects with debt, which a lot of people, just don't realize is out there and available.
Yeah, it wasn't available before. So the pre-qualification process, do they have to lay out the $6,000 or $8,000, then the pre-qualification comes? It seems like you'd want to get pre-qualified before you lay out the money, right?
Well, when we're talking about the application fee, that's different from like the licensing fee, and this is something that kind of gets a lot of people confused. So it's a $6,000 application fee that you have to pay right
and
up
no matter
front.
what happens, you still have to pay that.
That's
right?
up front, before you even start. Okay.
And then I would assume they're going to administer rec similar to the medical, where the license fee is kind of the last step of the process. The way I like to explain it is like you kind of give them the check and they give you the license.
Ah. Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Because otherwise, you lay out the money and they turn you down, you're just out the money, right?
Yeah. We expect the rec kind of licensing to be a lot kind of easier than it was in medical just last year. We've already seen the medical licensing process really speed up, and also, things that were causing denials in 2018 just quite simply aren't causing denials in 2019.
Such as?
So, in 2018, you forgot to put one charge from 1988 on your criminal history disclosure, a completely honest mistake. People were getting denied for that. Just across the board
different
denial.
Administration, too. I mean, I was at Hash Bash this year and heard that Governor Whitner was in there, but she had a announcement that she played congratulating everybody, and I don't think Rick Snyder would have done that. So, but so it's a little bit attitude change
Bill
there.
Schuette certainly wouldn't have.
Definitely not,
Yeah.
So, all right. So, what else? What kind of other advice would you advise on anybody wanting to start a micro business?
One thing I would say is, it is a marijuana business, and that's kind of sexy. But you still got to treat it like another business. So, with a lot of my clients from before I got into the cannabis field a few years ago, usually if they were looking to start a business, we would advise them to kind of write up a business plan, to the extent applicable, maybe do some just basic market research. And then also kind of put together a financial pro forma, which is kind of your projected numbers, how much money you have to make to break even, how much money you'll make at certain kind of thresholds. And that's something, I advise everyone who's getting into a new business to do, and I don't think it's any different for marijuana companies. And it's something, strangely, that a lot of times marijuana companies don't do as much. They think
More a seat of the pants kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, it's marijuana. Of course I'll make money. I don't have to think about that. The thing is, you still have to think about that. As the market, fills up a little more and gets saturated, there will be some competition, and you really want to make sure you're positioned well. And that means kind of planning things from the beginning as opposed to just kind of flying by the seat of your pants.
One thing I was curious about, and I don't know if you know this, you probably do. How long does it take to raise a marijuana plant to where you can cultivate it and turn it into something you can sell?
So that actually kind of goes back to our, discussion on how big your plant is. So, you can have plants that are, if they're small, we were talking a couple months from, a little seedling to a big plant. But, if you're growing these really big plants, then, it's going to take a much, much longer time, and you spend 3 or 4 months just vegging.
Okay.
And then in terms of pricing and all that, is just whatever the market will bear. There aren't any regulations on you can sell it for, you have to sell it for $100 an ounce or whatever, nothing like that, huh?
No. I mean, the market is setting the price, and right now that price is really, really high, a lot higher than it probably should be. Because if you compare it, the price of licensed product versus the price of caregiver product, there's a really big difference. As time goes on, that will start to drop. And, as market forces take hold, hopefully there will find an equilibrium. We won't end up like Oregon where the price just, essentially crashed. But, the advantage of the micro business is because you're vertically integrated, you're not really subject to the daily fluctuations of the wholesale price. Because when the wholesale price fluctuates, the consumer price doesn't really fluctuate as much.
All right. So, do other states have micro businesses of the type that Michigan is establishing under its law? I mean, is that the case in Colorado or Oregon?
So the two states that have implemented programs that are somewhat far along in them are California and Nevada. And California really has been the leader in this. There's a couple more states that recently just did micro business programs. I believe New Jersey, Massachusetts also have one. But California has kind of taken the lead, and there's, I believe, over 200 micro businesses in California. Theirs is slightly different. They don't do plant count; they do canopy size, and they have some rules that aren't really applicable to Michigan. But like the basic concept is the same, and you've seen these, really take off in California, and I would expect the same thing to happen here in Michigan.
All right, we've got a
1
little
minute,
less than a
yes.
minute left, so why don't you tell people how they can reach you and what kind of services you offer?
Sure. Yeah. So we are a full-service cannabis business law firm. My background is really working with businesses and real estate companies prior to the cannabis industry. To get a hold of me, scottrobertslaw.com is our website. I'd also say marijuanamicrobusinesses.com is another great resource that we post on quite a bit, and you can contact us through that as well. And
All right. Well, there you have it.